I never thought I'd become the most hated person in Willow Creek Estates over something as simple as wanting to save money on electricity. But here we are. It started on a Tuesday morning in late March, when I decided to finally pull the trigger on solar panels for my house in Phoenix, Arizona. The summer heat was already starting to creep in, and I was dreading those $400 electric bills that would arrive like clockwork from June through September. My name is Ryan Ostrander, and I have lived in this planned community for 3 years, keeping to myself, maintaining my lawn, and generally being what I thought was a model neighbor. The solar company representative, a cheerful guy named Marcus, came out that Tuesday to assess my roof. He walked around with his tablet, took measurements, snapped photos, and nodded approvingly. My south-facing roof was apparently perfect for solar installation. The numbers he showed me were impressive. After the federal tax credit and Arizona state incentives, I would break even in about 6 years, and after that, free electricity for decades. I signed the contract right there in my living room. 2 weeks later, the installation crew showed up at 7 in the morning. They were professional, efficient, and by the end of the day, my roof had 24 sleek black solar panels installed across it. The inverter was hummed quietly in my garage, and I watched with genuine excitement as my new monitoring app showed me generating electricity in real time. That first evening, I sat on my back patio with a beer, feeling pretty good about my decision. The letter arrived 3 days after installation. I pulled it from my mailbox along with the usual junk mail and bills. The return address said Willow Creek Estates Homeowners Association. I opened it standing right there by the mailbox, assuming it was just another reminder about trash can placement or the annual pool maintenance fee. Instead, I found myself reading a formal notice of violation. According to the letter, my solar panels were in direct violation of the Community Aesthetic Guidelines Section 12.4, which stated that all roof installations must be approved by the Architectural Review Committee prior to installation, and that any modifications to the exterior appearance of homes must maintain the established visual harmony of the neighborhood. I read the letter 3 times, feeling my blood pressure rise with each pass. The letter was signed by Barbara Stanton, president of the Willow Creek Estates HOA board. I had seen Barbara around the neighborhood. She was impossible to miss. A woman in her late 40s with that distinctive haircut that seemed to defy physics, always wearing tennis visors even though I had never seen her near the tennis courts. She drove a white Escalade with a custom license plate that read HL-LVN and had a habit of driving exactly 15 miles per hour through the neighborhood, presumably looking for violations. The letter demanded that I either remove the solar panels within 30 days or face daily fines of $100 until compliance was achieved. It also mentioned that I would be required to appear before the HOA board at their next meeting to discuss the violation. I immediately went inside and pulled out my copy of the HOA covenants, conditions, and restrictions. I had read through them when I bought the house, but I will admit I had not memorized every single line. I flipped to Section 12 and found the aesthetic guidelines. The language was vague and outdated, written probably 20 years ago when the development was first built. There was indeed a section about maintaining visual harmony, but nothing specific about solar panels. Then, I remembered something. Before I had signed the contract with the solar company, I had specifically asked Marcus about HOA approval. He had assured me that Arizona had a solar rights law that prevented HOAs from prohibiting solar installations. I dug through my paperwork and found the information packet he had given me. Sure enough, Arizona Revised Statute 44-1721 stated that HOAs could not prohibit the installation of solar devices, though they could regulate the placement to some degree. I felt a bit better armed with this information. I drafted a response letter to the HOA, politely explaining that my installation was protected under Arizona state law and that I had complied with all necessary building permits and inspections from the city. I dropped the letter in the mail that same day. The response came faster than I expected. This time, Barbara Stanton called me directly. I answered my phone while making dinner on a Thursday evening. "Is this Ryan Ostrander?" Her voice was sharp and nasal, the kind that could cut through steel. "Yes, this is Ryan." "This is Barbara Stanton, HOA president. I received your letter regarding the solar panel violation." "Great. Then you saw the information about the Arizona solar rights law." "Mr. Ostrander, I don't care what you think some law says. Our community has standards. Your house looks like a commercial building now with all those ugly panels up there. Several neighbors have complained." I took a deep breath. "Barbara, the law is pretty clear. HOAs cannot prohibit solar installations in Arizona. We're not prohibiting them, we're regulating them. There's a difference. Those panels are visible from the street and they are an eyesore. You should have installed them on the back of your roof where nobody would see them." "The back of my roof faces north. Solar panels need southern exposure to work efficiently. That's basic science." "Don't talk down to me, Mr. Ostrander. I have a master's degree in business administration. I understand science just fine. What you don't understand is community standards and property values. When someone drives through Willow Creek Estates, they should see uniformity and beauty, not some eco-warrior's political statement plastered across a roof. This isn't a political statement. It's about saving money on electricity. You'll be at the board meeting next Tuesday at 7. Cascade Community Center. Don't be late." She hung up before I could respond. I spent the weekend researching HOA law and solar rights in Arizona. The more I read, the more confident I became that I was in the right. The state law was explicit. HOAs could regulate placement to some extent, but only if there were feasible alternative locations that would not significantly reduce the system's efficiency. Since my back roof faced north and would produce maybe a third of the energy, there was no feasible alternative. I also joined several online forums for solar panel owners dealing with HOA disputes. I was surprised by how common this issue was. Dozens of people across Arizona and other states had fought similar battles. Most of them had eventually won, but the process was often lengthy and stressful. Tuesday evening arrived too quickly. I put on khakis and a button-down shirt, grabbed my folder of documentation, and drove to the Cascade Community Center. The building was a beige stucco structure with the same red tile roof that adorned every building in our development. Inside, the meeting room was set up with a long table at the front where 5 board members sat, and rows of chairs facing them where about 15 residents had gathered. I recognized Barbara Stanton immediately at the center of the board table. To her right was a thin man in his 60s with wire-rimmed glasses, and to her left was a younger woman, maybe mid-30s, taking notes on a laptop. The other 2 board members were an elderly couple who looked like they would rather be anywhere else. Barbara called the meeting to order and ran through various administrative items: pool resurfacing, landscape maintenance contracts, and a reminder about trash can storage. Then she got to what she called new business. Item 7. The architectural violation at 4852 Desert Willow Drive. "Mr. Ostrander, would you please come forward?" I walked to the front and stood facing the board. About a dozen pairs of eyes watched me from the audience. Mr. Ostrander, you installed solar panels on your roof without seeking architectural approval from this board. Do you dispute this fact? I don't dispute that I didn't seek approval, no. But I did obtain all necessary city permits, and I complied with state law regarding solar installations. The thin man with glasses leaned forward. I'm Gerald Morrison, board treasurer. Mr. Ostrander, our CCRs are quite clear about modifications to home exteriors. This applies to everyone in the community. I understand that, Mr. Morrison, but Arizona state law specifically protects the right to install solar devices. The law was passed specifically because HOAs were preventing people from using solar energy. Barbara's face reddened. This is not about preventing solar energy. This is about aesthetics and property values. Your installation is visible from the street and it diminishes the cohesive appearance of our community. Several residents have filed complaints. May I ask who complained? That's confidential. How many complaints? Barbara shuffled some papers. That's not relevant. I think it is relevant. You're claiming that my solar panels are causing some kind of community-wide issue. I'd like to know the scope of this supposed problem. The younger woman with the laptop spoke up. Mr. Ostrander, we received 3 written complaints and several verbal complaints to board members. Thank you, I said. So out of 240 homes in this development, 3 people wrote letters. Barbara cut in sharply. The number of complaints is irrelevant. 1 violation is enough. Mr. Ostrander, we're prepared to work with you on this. We're not unreasonable people. If you remove the panels from the front-facing roof sections and relocate them to the rear of your property, we will waive the fines. That would reduce my system's efficiency by about 70%, making the entire investment pointless. That sounds like a personal problem, Barbara said. You should have thought about that before you installed them without permission. I pulled out my printed copy of the Arizona statute and handed it to the board. This law specifically states that HOAs cannot require placement that reduces efficiency by more than 10%. What you're asking me to do is illegal under state law. Gerald Morrison took the paper and read it, his lips moving slightly. He looked uncomfortable. Barbara, he might have a point here. I don't care what that paper says, Barbara snapped. Our attorney will handle this. Mr. Ostrander, you have 30 days to remove those panels or relocate them. Continued non-compliance will result in daily fines of $100, and we will place a lien on your property if necessary. This meeting is adjourned. I stood there for a moment, stunned by how quickly she had shut down any reasonable discussion. The board members began gathering their papers. A few residents glanced at me sympathetically, but most avoided eye contact. As I walked toward the exit, an older man with a thick gray beard approached me. Don't let them bully you, he said quietly. I'm Tom. I live over on Sagaro Street. I looked into getting solar panels last year and Barbara shut me down before I even got quotes. She's been running this HOA like a fiefdom for 5 years. What happened when you pushed back? I didn't. My wife didn't want the fight, but I wish I had. Your panels look fine. Hell, they look professional. Barbara just hates anything she didn't approve personally. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept running through the meeting in my mind, getting angrier each time. I had done everything right. I had pulled permits, hired a licensed contractor, followed building codes, and complied with state law. And now, I was being threatened with fines and liens because Barbara Stanton thought my solar panels were ugly. The next morning, I called a real estate attorney whose information I had found online. Her name was Patricia Remington, and she specialized in HOA disputes. I explained the situation during a 30-minute consultation that cost me $200. You're absolutely in the right, Patricia said. The Arizona solar rights law is clear, and courts have consistently sided with homeowners in these disputes. The HOA can regulate placement to some extent, but they cannot require placement that significantly reduces efficiency. So what do I do? You have a few options. You can wait for them to file suit and defend yourself, or you can proactively file a lawsuit seeking a declaratory judgment that your installation is legal. There's also the option of demanding arbitration, which your CCRs probably require before litigation. How much would this cost me? Depends on how far they want to take it. If they're reasonable and back down quickly, maybe $3,000 to $5,000. If it goes to full litigation, could be $20,000 to $30,000. My stomach dropped. I can't afford that. The good news is that Arizona law allows for recovery of attorney's fees in HOA disputes if you win. So if you prevail, the HOA would have to reimburse your legal costs, but you would need to front the money during the process. I thanked her and hung up, feeling defeated. I had already spent $18,000 on the solar installation after all the incentives. I didn't have another $30,000 sitting around for a legal battle. Over the next week, I tried to put it out of my mind and focus on work. I was a project manager for a commercial construction company, and we had a major retail development breaking ground in Scottsdale. The job kept me busy during the day, but at night, I would come home and stare at my beautiful solar panels, watching my monitoring app show $0 in electricity costs, and I would get angry all over again. Then the fine notice arrived. It came certified mail, requiring my signature. The HOA was now assessing daily fines of $100 beginning May 1st, exactly 30 days after their initial violation notice. They had also filed a lien against my property for the amount of the fines plus administrative fees. I called Patricia Remington again. She reviewed the documents I emailed her and confirmed what I already knew. This was escalating quickly. They're betting you'll cave rather than fight, Patricia said. It's a common intimidation tactic, but here's the thing. If they're assessing fines for a violation of state law, those fines are themselves illegal. You have grounds to sue them for harassment and to demand they remove the lien. What would you recommend? File a complaint with the Arizona Department of Real Estate. They regulate HOAs in the state. Also, send a formal cease and desist letter to the HOA board, citing the state law and demanding they stop the fines and remove the lien. I can draft that letter for you for $500. That might be enough to make them reconsider. I agreed, and she sent me the letter 2 days later. It was 3 pages of dense legal language that essentially said the HOA was violating state law and could face significant liability if they continued. I mailed it certified to Barbara Stanton and to the HOA's registered agent. The response was swift and unexpected. 2 days after the letter was delivered, I came home from work to find a news van parked on my street. A young reporter with perfect hair and a microphone was standing in front of my house with a cameraman. "Mr. Ostrander," she called as I got out of my truck. "Yes." "I'm Jennifer Rios from KPNX News. We received a tip about your dispute with the HOA over solar panels. Would you be willing to go on camera and tell your story?" I hesitated. Part of me wanted to refuse to keep this private, but another part of me was tired of being pushed around. "Sure," I said. Jennifer and her cameraman followed me to my front yard. She asked me to explain the situation, and I walked through the entire timeline. The installation, the violation notice, the board meeting, the fines, and the lien. She asked about the state law, and I explained how Arizona specifically protected solar rights. "Have you calculated how much the HOA's fines would cost you?" $100 per day. That's $3,000 a month. At that rate, the fines would exceed the cost of the entire solar installation in 6 months. And what about your electric bill? That's the ironic part. Before solar, my bill averaged about $250 a month, spiking to $400 or more in summer. Since the panels were installed, my bill has been $0. I'm actually generating excess power that goes back to the grid. I'm saving about $3,000 a year on electricity. Jennifer looked directly at the camera. So an Arizona homeowner is being fined for using a renewable energy source that's protected under state law, all because his HOA president thinks solar panels are ugly. We reached out to the Willow Creek Estates HOA for comment, but they declined to speak with us. This is Jennifer Rios, KPNX News. The story aired that evening on the 6 o'clock news. I watched it on my couch, feeling a mixture of vindication and anxiety. My phone started ringing almost immediately. Friends, coworkers, even my mother calling from Tucson. The story had struck a nerve. By the next morning, the story had been picked up by several other local news outlets and was trending on social media. My doorbell rang constantly with reporters asking for interviews. The Phoenix New Times ran a longer piece with the headline, "HOA declares war on solar energy." The comments section was overwhelmingly supportive of my position. Then things got interesting. A local solar installation company called me and offered to cover my legal fees if I would allow them to use my case in their marketing. They saw it as an opportunity to highlight the obstacles homeowners faced and to position themselves as advocates for solar rights. I agreed immediately. With funding secured, Patricia Remington filed a lawsuit against the Willow Creek Estates HOA seeking a declaratory judgment that my solar installation was legal under Arizona law, demanding the removal of all fines and the lien, and requesting attorney's fees. The lawsuit also named Barbara Stanton individually for harassment. The legal process moved slowly. Summer arrived, and my solar panels performed beautifully. June, July, and August in Phoenix are brutal, with temperatures regularly exceeding 110 degrees. My neighbors' electric bills soared to $500, $600, even $700 per month. Mine remained at zero. In fact, my system was generating so much excess power that the utility company was crediting my account. I was building up a bank of credits that would carry me through the winter months when solar production decreased. The HOA continued to send fine notices every month. By September, they claimed I owed them $15,000. The notices went straight into a folder that I turned over to Patricia. The preliminary hearing was scheduled for October. The case was assigned to Judge Richard Kovacs, a veteran of the Maricopa County Superior Court known for his no-nonsense approach and his support for property rights. The day of the hearing, I put on my best suit and met Patricia at the courthouse. The HOA was represented by a corporate law firm from Scottsdale, 3 attorneys in expensive suits carrying leather briefcases. Barbara Stanton sat in the gallery, her arms crossed, radiating hostility. Judge Kovacs reviewed the motions and asked the HOA's lead attorney, a man named Harrison Webb, to explain the HOA's position. "Your Honor, this is a simple matter of contract law. Mr. Ostrander signed the HOA covenants when he purchased his home. Those covenants require architectural approval for exterior modifications. He violated that agreement. The HOA has the right to enforce its rules through fines and liens." Patricia stood. "Your Honor, Arizona Revised Statute 44-1721 explicitly prevents HOAs from prohibiting solar installations. The statute exists precisely because HOAs were doing what Willow Creek Estates is attempting here. The law supersedes private covenants. But the statute allows for reasonable regulation, Harrison countered. The HOA offered Mr. Ostrander an alternative. He could have placed the panels on the rear of his roof, where they would not be visible from the street. That alternative would reduce system efficiency by 70%, Patricia said. The statute specifically prohibits HOAs from requiring placement that reduces efficiency by more than 10%. The HOA's demand is illegal under state law. Judge Kovacs looked at the HOA's attorneys. Do you dispute the efficiency numbers? Harrison Webb shifted uncomfortably. We have not conducted an independent analysis, Your Honor, but aesthetics are a legitimate concern. The community has a right to maintain property values. Show me the data on property values, Judge Kovacs said. Has anyone conducted a study showing that solar panels reduce property values in this community? Well, no, Your Honor, but common sense would suggest that anything that detracts from uniformity could potentially impact values. Common sense is not a legal standard, Judge Kovacs said dryly. He looked at Patricia. Do you have evidence on property values? We do, Your Honor. Multiple studies show that solar panels actually increase property values by an average of 4%. Buyers view them as a valuable asset because they reduce long-term ownership costs. I have submitted 3 peer-reviewed studies as exhibits. Judge Kovacs spent several minutes reviewing the documents. Finally, he looked up. Here's how I see this. Arizona has made a clear policy decision to encourage solar energy. The legislature passed a law that protects homeowners' right to install solar devices. HOAs can regulate placement to some degree, but they cannot make demands that effectively nullify the homeowner's rights. Requiring Mr. Ostrander to place panels where they would be 70% less efficient is not reasonable regulation. It's prohibition by another name. Harrison Webb tried to interject, but Judge Kovacs held up his hand. I'm granting Mr. Ostrander's motion for a declaratory judgment. The solar installation is legal and complies with state law. The HOA is ordered to cease all fines immediately and to remove the lien from Mr. Ostrander's property within 10 days. I'm also awarding attorney's fees to Mr. Ostrander. We'll have a separate hearing on the amount. I felt a wave of relief wash over me. Patricia squeezed my shoulder. Across the courtroom, Barbara Stanton's face was the color of a ripe tomato, but the case wasn't over. The HOA appealed the decision, dragging the process out for another 6 months. During that time, more neighbors in Willow Creek Estates contacted me about getting solar panels. The publicity from my case had educated the community about solar rights, and suddenly Barbara's grip on the neighborhood aesthetic was slipping. Tom, the bearded guy who had approached me after the board meeting, was the first. He hired the same solar company I had used and installed an even larger system on his roof. When the HOA sent him a violation notice, he forwarded it to Patricia Remington, who sent back the court order from my case. The HOA backed down immediately. 3 more homes installed solar panels over the winter, then 5 more in the spring. By the time the appeals court heard the HOA's appeal, Willow Creek Estates had 15 homes with solar installations, and all of them were paying $0 for electricity. The appeals court upheld Judge Kovacs's ruling, adding in their written opinion that HOAs needed to adapt to changing technology and state policy priorities. The 3-judge panel was unanimous. The attorney's fees hearing happened in June, more than a year after I had first received that violation notice. Patricia had documented every hour she had spent on the case, every filing fee, every expert witness cost. The total came to $42,000. Judge Kovacs awarded me the full amount, plus interest. The HOA had to pay. The money came out of the community's reserve fund, which meant every homeowner in Willow Creek Estates was effectively paying for Barbara Stanton's crusade against my solar panels. This did not make her popular. A recall petition started circulating in July. It needed signatures from 20% of the homeowners to trigger a special election for the board. The petition reached that threshold in 3 weeks. The recall election was scheduled for September. I attended the meeting where the results were announced. The community center was packed, standing room only. Barbara Stanton and 2 other board members who had supported her were recalled by overwhelming margins. Tom, my bearded supporter, was elected as the new HOA president. 2 other solar panel owners won board seats. The new board's first action was to amend the architectural guidelines to explicitly allow solar installations without pre-approval, as long as they complied with building codes and state law. They also passed a resolution apologizing to me for the previous board's actions. But there was one more twist to come. In October, nearly 18 months after this whole thing started, I received a call from the FBI. An agent named Sarah Chen asked if she could meet with me to discuss the Willow Creek Estates HOA. I agreed, confused about why the FBI would be interested in an HOA dispute over solar panels. Agent Chen and her partner met me at a coffee shop in Phoenix. They showed me their credentials and then opened a laptop. "Mr. Ostrander, we've been investigating financial irregularities in several HOAs across Arizona. Your case drew our attention to Willow Creek Estates, and when we started looking at the books, we found some concerning patterns." She showed me a spreadsheet on the laptop screen. It was a financial analysis of the HOA's accounts going back 5 years, during Barbara Stanton's tenure as president. The HOA collected approximately $3 million in annual fees from homeowners. About 40% of that should have gone into the reserve fund for capital improvements and emergencies. But we found that over a 5-year period, roughly $2 million was diverted from the reserves into accounts controlled solely by Miss Stanton. She was stealing. It appears so. She created several shell companies that supposedly provided services to the HOA. Landscape consulting, management advisory services, community improvement initiatives. All of them were fraudulent. The money went into these shell companies and then into personal accounts belonging to Miss Stanton and her husband. Holy crap! Your legal battle and the subsequent media coverage led to increased scrutiny of the HOA's finances. The new board hired an independent auditor, and that auditor discovered the irregularities and reported them to us. We've been building a case for the past several months. Agent Chen closed the laptop. We're going to be arresting Miss Stanton and her husband later today. You'll probably hear about it on the news. I wanted to give you a heads up since your case was the catalyst for uncovering this fraud. That evening, the news showed footage of Barbara Stanton being led out of her house in handcuffs. Her husband was arrested at his office. The charges included wire fraud, money laundering, and theft. The local news stations played it as a major story, with reporters standing outside Willow Creek Estates explaining how an HOA president had embezzled millions from her own neighbors. The irony was not lost on anyone. Barbara had been so focused on maintaining her power and control, so determined to force me to remove my solar panels, that she had drawn attention to the HOA's operations. If she had just left me alone, the fraud might have continued for years. The trial happened the following summer. Both Barbara and her husband pleaded guilty as part of a deal with prosecutors. Barbara was sentenced to 8 years in federal prison and ordered to pay full restitution. Her husband got 6 years. Their Escalade, their vacation home in Sedona, their boat, all of it was seized and sold to help repay what they had stolen. The homeowners of Willow Creek Estates received a partial refund of their HOA fees, though the full amount of the theft would take years to recover. The new board implemented strict financial controls and transparency measures. Monthly financial reports were now posted online for all residents to review. As for me, my solar panels continued to perform beautifully. My electric bills remained at $0 month after month. I calculated that in the 2 years since installation, I had saved nearly $7,000 in electricity costs. The system was on track to pay for itself in just over 5 years, earlier than the original projection. More importantly, 40% of homes in Willow Creek Estates now had solar panels. Our neighborhood, which Barbara had wanted to keep looking like a uniform desert paradise from the 1990s, had become a showcase for renewable energy. Real estate agents started marketing it as a solar-friendly community, and property values actually increased. I still see Tom regularly. He's taken his role as HOA president seriously, focusing on maintaining common areas and ensuring the community runs smoothly without the drama and authoritarianism that defined the previous board. He told me once that my refusal to back down had inspired him to get more involved. On a warm evening in November, almost exactly 2 years after I first installed those solar panels, I was sitting on my back patio with a beer, watching the sun set over the desert mountains. My monitoring app showed that my system had produced 54 kilowatt-hours that day. My utility bill was still $0. My phone buzzed with a text from my neighbor, Maria, who lived 2 houses down. She had just scheduled a consultation with a solar company and wanted to know if I had any advice. I smiled and typed out a response, happy to help another person join the solar revolution. The next morning, I checked my mail and found the quarterly HOA newsletter. Tom had written the president's message, highlighting recent improvements to the community park and reminding residents about the upcoming holiday lights contest. There was also a small notice about the HOA's new solar incentive program. Any homeowner who installed solar panels would receive a $50 reduction in their quarterly HOA fees for 5 years. The board had voted to incentivize renewable energy using some of the recovered funds from Barbara's embezzlement. Things had come full circle in the most unexpected way. What started as a fight over ugly solar panels had exposed massive fraud, led to criminal prosecutions, transformed a community, and saved me thousands of dollars in electricity costs. I drove through the neighborhood that weekend, noticing all the rooftops adorned with solar panels. They gleamed in the Arizona sun, converting light into power, saving money and reducing carbon emissions. To me, they were beautiful. Not because of their appearance, though I thought they looked sleek and modern, but because of what they represented. Independence, sustainability, and the willingness to stand up for what's right, even when powerful people try to intimidate you. My electric bill was $0, and it was staying that way. Barbara Stanton had thought those solar panels were ugly, but from my perspective, they were the best decision I had ever made. Not just for the money I saved, though that was certainly nice, but for everything that followed. For the community that emerged from the fight. For the example it set about not backing down from bullies. For the proof that doing the right thing, even when it's hard, can lead to outcomes more positive than you ever imagined. 3 years after that first violation notice, I was still in Willow Creek Estates. My solar panels were still on my roof, generating power every single day. My electric bill was still $0. And the community had transformed from a place ruled by one person's arbitrary aesthetic preferences into a place where people could make their own choices, save money, and do their part for the environment. Tom called me one afternoon with an interesting proposal. A documentary crew wanted to make a film about the whole saga. They wanted to interview me, show the court proceedings, talk about the embezzlement case, and highlight how one person's stand against an overreaching HOA had rippled into something much larger. I agreed to participate. The documentary took 6 months to produce and premiered at a film festival in Phoenix. It was called Solar Rights, and it told the full story, from my first installation to Barbara's arrest to the community transformation. The film won an Audience Choice Award and was picked up by a streaming service. Suddenly, I was getting calls from homeowners across the country dealing with similar issues. HOAs in Texas, Florida, California, Nevada, all of them trying to prevent or regulate solar installations in ways that violated state laws. I connected them with Patricia Remington and other attorneys who specialized in solar rights cases. Several lawsuits were filed, and most of them ended in settlements favorable to the homeowners. The solar company that had funded my legal battle used footage from the documentary in their advertising. Their business increased by 40% in the following year. They even named a new solar panel package, the Ostrander system, in my honor, which I found both flattering and a little embarrassing. I got a promotion at work, partly because of the project management skills I had demonstrated in handling the HOA dispute. My boss told me that anyone who could navigate a complex legal battle while maintaining their composure and ethical standards was someone he wanted in leadership. I was now overseeing multiple construction projects across Arizona with a team of 12 people reporting to me. Life had genuinely improved in ways I never could have predicted when I signed that solar installation contract. And every month, like clockwork, my electric bill arrived with the same beautiful number on it: $0. I started volunteering with a nonprofit that helped low-income homeowners access solar energy. Arizona had programs that could subsidize installations for qualifying households, but many people didn't know about them or found the application process intimidating. I helped people navigate the paperwork, understand their rights, and deal with their HOAs if necessary. One of the families I helped was a single mother named Rosa who lived in a modest home in Mesa. Her summer electric bills were destroying her budget, sometimes exceeding $600 per month, because she had to keep the air conditioning running for her 2 young kids. We got her qualified for a state program that covered 80% of the installation cost. When her panels went live and she saw her first $0 electric bill, she cried. That moment reminded me why all of this had mattered. It wasn't really about me versus Barbara Stanton. It wasn't about winning a legal fight or exposing fraud, though those things were important. It was about the fundamental right to make your own home more efficient, to save money, to use clean energy, and to not be bullied by people who cared more about control than about what was actually good for the community. On the 5-year anniversary of my solar installation, I threw a party. I invited everyone from the neighborhood who had supported me, along with Patricia Remington, Tom and the current HOA board, the solar company representatives, and even Jennifer Rios, the reporter who had first covered my story. About 60 people showed up to my backyard. Tom gave a toast. 5 years ago, Ryan did something that seemed simple. He put solar panels on his roof. But that simple act led to a legal battle, exposed corruption, changed our community, and inspired hundreds of other people to stand up for their rights. Here's to Ryan, to solar power, and to having the courage to do what's right even when it's difficult. Everyone raised their glasses. I felt a little embarrassed by the attention, but also proud of what we had all accomplished together. Patricia pulled me aside during the party. "I wanted you to know something. That case changed the trajectory of my practice. I now specialize almost exclusively in solar rights and renewable energy law. I have clients in 8 states. Your willingness to fight opened up an entire area of law that's becoming more important every year as more people adopt solar energy. So thank you. I should be thanking you. I couldn't have done it without your help. You could have backed down at any point. Most people do. The fact that you didn't made all the difference." As the sun set and the party wound down, I stood on my patio looking at those 24 black solar panels on my roof. They had been the source of so much conflict, but they had also been the catalyst for so much good. They were still generating power, still saving me money, still reducing my carbon footprint. My electric bill was $0, and it would remain $0 for decades to come. Barbara Stanton had said they were ugly, but she had been wrong about that just like she had been wrong about so many other things. They were beautiful in every way that mattered. The story could have ended there, but life has a way of adding codas to even the most complete stories. 6 months after my anniversary party, I received a letter from the Arizona State Legislature. They were considering a bill to strengthen solar rights protections and wanted me to testify before a committee. I took a personal day from work and drove to the state capitol in downtown Phoenix. The hearing room was formal and a bit intimidating, with high ceilings and rows of seats facing a raised platform where legislators sat. I was one of 5 people scheduled to testify. When my turn came, I approached the microphone and told my story once again. I kept it concise, focusing on the key points. The violation notice, the threats of fines and liens, the legal battle, the ultimate victory, and the community transformation that followed. I explained how existing law had protected my rights, but that many homeowners were still being intimidated by their HOAs and didn't have the resources to fight back. Several legislators asked questions. One representative from Tucson asked how much I had saved in electricity costs. I had the numbers memorized. Over 5 years, about $17,000 in avoided electric bills, with savings accelerating as electricity rates increased. Another legislator asked about the impact on property values. I explained that multiple studies showed solar panels increased values, and that our neighborhood had become more desirable specifically because it was known as solar-friendly. The bill passed 3 months later with bipartisan support. It strengthened homeowner protections, streamlined the process for resolving disputes, and added penalties for HOAs that violated solar rights laws. The governor signed it with me standing behind her at the ceremony. The photo appeared in newspapers across the state. But perhaps the most satisfying moment came 2 years after that, on an ordinary Tuesday morning. I was getting ready for work when I heard my doorbell ring. I opened the door to find a young couple standing on my porch, looking nervous. "Are you Ryan Ostrander?" the woman asked. "Yes." "We're buying a house in Willow Creek Estates, 3 streets over. Our real estate agent said we should talk to you about solar panels. She said you're the reason this neighborhood is so solar-friendly now." I invited them in and spent an hour answering their questions, showing them my monitoring app, explaining the incentive programs available, and giving them the names of reputable solar companies. They left excited and grateful. A month later, I saw the solar installation crew at their house. Another rooftop in Willow Creek Estates was about to start generating clean, free electricity. That was 7 years ago now. I'm still in the same house, still generating solar power, still paying $0 for electricity. The panels have performed flawlessly, requiring only basic annual maintenance. In total, I've saved more than $30,000 in electricity costs, far exceeding the initial investment. Tom is still the HOA president, now in his 4th term. Under his leadership, Willow Creek Estates has become a model community, featured in sustainability magazines and urban planning journals. 70% of homes now have solar panels. We've added electric vehicle charging stations at the community center, converted the landscape lighting to solar-powered LEDs, and installed a community solar array that provides power to the pool and clubhouse. Property values have increased faster than comparable neighborhoods without solar. Homes in Willow Creek Estates now sell at a premium, with real estate listings highlighting the solar-friendly policies and the community's commitment to sustainability. Barbara Stanton served her time and was released from federal prison last year. I heard through the neighborhood grapevine that she moved to another state, wanting to start fresh somewhere nobody knew her story. I don't harbor any ill will toward her anymore. She made terrible choices and paid a steep price for them. I hope she's learned from the experience. As for me, life is good. I got married 2 years ago to an environmental engineer named Beth who shares my passion for renewable energy. We met at a sustainability conference where I was speaking about the HOA battle and community transformation. She thought my story was fascinating. I thought she was beautiful and brilliant. We bought our first house together in another solar-friendly community in Tempe. And of course, the first thing we did was install solar panels. On the weekends, I still volunteer with the Solar Access nonprofit, still help families navigate the installation process, still connect people with resources and legal support when they face HOA opposition. The work feels meaningful and important, a way to pay forward the support I received when I needed it. My monitoring app shows that over the lifetime of my installation, my system has generated enough electricity to power my home for 7 years, offset 40 tons of carbon emissions, and saved me tens of thousands of dollars. Those numbers will only grow in the years ahead. Every month my electric bill arrives, and every month it shows the same beautiful number, $0. That's how a fight over ugly solar panels became a story about justice, community, sustainability, and the importance of standing up for what's right. It's how one homeowner's refusal to back down exposed corruption, changed laws, transformed a neighborhood, and inspired countless others to embrace renewable energy. My solar panels weren't ugly. They were the beginning of something better, something cleaner, something more honest and sustainable. Barbara Stanton tried to take them down, but in the end, all she did was help them shine brighter.